Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to 8th lecture of computer programming for civil engineers in Python. In the previous lecture, we were talking about functions and files a little bit, and in today's lecture, we'll continue more with that. And in today's lecture, we'll take an example from project management, and with that, we will try to learn what is keyword argument in Python functions, also how to load and save data from and to files. So we'll create some file with some data and then we'll try to load and save data into it in a different way. In bonus, as usual, we will learn about conditional statements, if else. So let us continue with the example of project management. So in this case, we are to manage a construction of a 12 feet high boundary wall on a property line. So this is a house to be built, and this is a plot whose boundary is shown here, about 55 feet wide and 122 feet long. On this property line, the owner wants to build a boundary wall, and the height of the boundary wall, just like the one shown here, is required to be 12 feet. And the owner like to complete this project in 30 days. The details of some resources is given here. So let's see what resources are available to us. So we have two mixers for mixing mortar that will be placed in between the bricks. So one mixer has the ability or the capacity to produce mortar for 500 square feet area of the wall. So if this wall is 12 feet high and its length is 10 feet, then the total square feet area of this wall will become 12 times 10, so 120 square feet. The number of masons we have is 3, and one mason is capable to build a wall of 100 square feet per day, for example. And we have 6 laborers available in our company who has been hired by the owner to construct this wall, and one labor has the ability to help the mason and with the mixing and other things and transportation of the material, and so many other tasks need to be done like shoveling and stuff. They can help in building a 300 square feet of wall per day. So one labor has the ability or capacity to help in construction of 300 square feet of wall. Of course, in the construction of wall, we need excavator, we need welder for steel work, we need precast transportation, and so many other things are required, but that will make this whole exercise very complicated. But let's stick to these three resources that we have available, and with that, let us learn some more about functions and files in Python. So let's continue with this, and I already have a spider running. So we have a blank file here. So first of all, let us store the available information from the data provided into some variables. So these all comments, we don't need them now, so let me remove them. So let's store the capacities of masons, laborers, and the mixers in certain variables. So let me start with mason's capacity, which is mason capacity per day, and let me store it here, which is 100. We don't know the units, we cannot write units here, so let me write them with some comment. So it is actually 100 square feet per day. Next store the labor's capacity. So labor capacity per day equals to 300, and we know the units are same, which is square feet of wall per day. And finally the mixer's capacity. So mixer capacity per day equals to 5 100, of course. Just for our reminder, a comment here, square feet of wall per day. So there it is. Now let's see what we have to do. We have to write a function that writes a report of resource management for this project. So that is the main task for today. So let us create a function that writes the report on the screen first of all, but then we will try to write the same report in a report file. So because this report will have the list of available list of resources that are required to complete this project and similar information based on the available resources. So let's create a function called list project resources. So we start by writing def, which defines a function, and then list. Let me start with underscore project underscore resources. So we'll decide what inputs it will take from the information given. So because the wish of the owner is to finish the project in 30 days, we need to check in our function that do we have the resources that can work for 30 days or not. So the duration is one important thing that we need to take here as an input. So let me write duration of the project, of course, and then of course the amount of work that need to be done. So the total amount of work in square feet of the construction of this boundary wall will be the total perimeter of the wall, which is 55 plus 122 plus 55 plus 122 again, multiplied by the height of the wall, which is told to us to be 12 feet as shown in this figure as well. So that will be the total surface area in square feet that need to be built. So wall area. So let me write another variable as total wall area. So let me use the capitalization here for differentiation of different words in this variable. Of course, once we define a function, we need to after definition we need to write colon at the end, and then from the next line with some indentation, which is a gap here like this, which can be any length gap, maybe 2 tabs, 3 tabs, or maybe just a single space or multiple spaces. So it could be anything, but for now let me use 1 tab. So from here we can start working on this. But before that, let's store some more information in some global variables that we may be needing in different places. So for example, in our company who is going to construct this for the owner, we have 2 mixers, 3 masons and 6 laborers. So let's write their number in some variables globally here. So num of masons equals to 3, number of laborers equals to 6, and finally number of mixers equals to 2. As you know, we can write a function description here below the function. So let us clear ourselves by writing what we actually want this function to do for us. So what we want is that we want to list the number of resources required to complete this project in provided duration or else tell us how many more resources are required or how much duration of project need to be increased. So let me repeat what actually we plan to do. So because now we are writing a multi-line code, so we have to be triple quoting it. So we want this function that whenever this function be called, it should be able to list the number of resources that are required to complete this project. For example, if out of 3 only 2 masons can construct it, so instead of 3 it will tell 2 masons required, and if out of 6 only 3 laborers are enough and 2 mixers are required, so it will tell the exact number of resources that are required to complete this project. But in case if number of masons is required is more than what is available, like 3 is available and the required is 6, then it should also tell that we need 3 more masons. Or otherwise what we can do is we can work with 3 masons, but we can actually increase the duration of the project as well. So instead of, for example, 30 days, we can propose how many days should we increase so that without hiring more masons out of our capacity, we can still complete the project, but in more days, of course. So these are the 3 things that we need to report in this function, and this is how we will manage the resources in this project. So let's start working on it. So first of all, let's work with masons. Now, if we divide the total wall area by the mason's capacity per day, then we will get the number of days required by the mason, one mason, to complete the construction of the wall. So let me write it here like this: days per mason equals to, copy the total wall area from here and pasting it here, divided by the copying the mason's capacity, pasting it here. So now the area is in square feet, and this divide by square feet per day. So square feet will cancel with square feet and we'll have days for one mason only. So one mason will take this many days to complete this project. So for now, let me just simply print the days per mason to see how this function is working. And here separately, let me call this function as list underscore project resources, and I give the duration as 30 days, and total wall area is the perimeter times the height of the wall. So the perimeter is 122 feet plus 55 feet whole multiplied by 2, and then the result multiplied by 12. So this is the complete area of the wall. So let's run this code, and once this function will be called, it will print the days per mason yet for us. So let's see what it gives. Now notice the indent of the first line here was these spaces, but in coming lines we had some extra space, and then mistakenly I forgot to remove the indent from where we started in the first line. So it should be indented properly. So let me delete one indent here and here. So now this is perfectly indented with the first line. The first line started from here and it continues all the way here, and we have the indent of other 2 lines, other 2 statements in the same way. The first statement is multi-line and it covers 5 lines, but then it starts from this indent level, this gap in behind it, this one. So it should be maintained in every coming statement. So let me run this code once again. So here it is. It tells that it will require 42.48 days by one mason to complete this project. But luckily in our company we have more than one masons available. So let us calculate how many masons will be required to complete this project. So in order to differentiate between number of masons here and number of masons we are going to calculate here, these are actually available. So let me write available here. So these are the number of masons that are available to us, but the number of masons required will be num of masons required is equal to the days per mason divided by the total duration of the project. So let's see, print this result and see what we get out of it. So now once I will click on the play or run button here, first of all in all these variables Python will store these numbers, then it will define this function in the memory, then it will run this function by giving 30 as duration and the result of all this as total wall area. And once it will be called, only then this statement will be running first to calculate days per mason, then this statement will run to calculate number of masons required, and this statement will run to print the number of masons required on the screen, and the program will end. So let's run it. So we need 1.4 masons, which is of course not physically possible, so we have to actually increase it by 1, so we can round and increase by 1 as well, or we can use another very sophisticated function in the math library which is called ceil or ceiling. It automatically rounds up the number by 1. So let me import on the top, import math, and then from here let me write math.ceil ceiling, and in parentheses I close these results. So let's see, the first result of only this division was 1.416. so let's see after applying ceil what happens to this result. So let me run it again. So you can see it did the same thing as we did in the previous lecture. It removed the decimal places and increase the number by 1. So we can do all that by sealing it. So what ceil do is it round it to the next larger number. So rounding this 1.4 to the next larger number is actually 2. There is another function which is called floor, which is the opposite of ceil, and what it do is it rounds to the next lowest number. So let's see its result as well. So you can see the after removing these decimals, the next lowest possible number than this, or next lowest possible integer from 1.416 is actually 1, but we need next larger one. So let me write ceil here. So what we have done is, let me run it again, we have calculated that out of 3 masons, how many do we need here to run this project. So let's report it properly in a statement form. So what we can, instead of printing this only, we can first of all check whether the number of masons is less than or equal to the available or not, and if not, then what should be the more number of masons required, or how many days shall we increase the duration of this project. So here we are going to introduce you with the conditional statement of if and else. So I'm going to write if in parenthesis number of masons required is less than or equal to number of masons available. So I'm copying and simply pasting it here. And whenever we write the if statement, just like the defining function, we close it with the colon, because we also start a block of things that we need to run once this statement is true or satisfied. Now if this is true, then automatically, if you notice, with the enter, the indent, new indent has been provided for if. Now this particular indent will remain continued and for whatever we want to run with if. So if the number of masons required is perfectly fine, which means it is less than or equal to the number of masons available, then we want simply it to print. I'm going to format in a special way by writing F, and within quotations I'm going to write a statement. So I'm writing a statement, number of masons required, masons required for project, full stop. Now notice I started it with F, which means I'm going to format the variables and formulas within this statement. So it is not going to work at this stage because this is a variable while this is just a statement I want to write. So if I want the value of this variable to be pasted in here, I will close it in curly brackets. So now what it will do, once this code will run, first of all the number of masons required is calculated, then checked is it within the limit or not. If it is, then it will write a statement that whatever is the number of masons required, because it is in the curly brackets, it will be replaced with the number, and then after that a statement will be written which is masons required for project. So let me run this code now and see the result. So here it is, 2 masons required for project. Let me increase the height of the wall from 12 to 22 feet, and let's see how many masons now we require. So now 3 masons are enough to construct this wall. Let me bring it back to 12 and let me reduce the days to 10 days if the owner want to complete the project in 10 days. So let's see what happens. Nothing is printed because the number of masons is less than or equal to number of masons available. Required number is more than this. So this statement became false and nothing will happen. So we want that in case else it should tell the problem. So let me press a tab, and this time we want the indent of as same as if. So I'll write else, and with the colon again I press enter, and this time all these statements written here will be printed if this condition is true, and all the statement with this indent will be done or running once the case is else or this is false. So let's print this time the number of masons required to see how many masons are there actually. So let me run this code now and see the result. So here it is, we have only 3 masons available, but out of that now, because required is 5, so that is why this became false, because the number of masons required was not smaller or equal to the number of masons available. So because this was false, the case was else, so it printed the result we want. So here what we want now is to write that this many extra masons are required. So how many extra masons are required? The number of masons required minus the number of masons available. And let me run this now. So now it is giving us the number of extra masons required over and above the available. So now let's write it properly in the form of a report. So I again start with formatting with F, and here we have some calculations. So I simply close all of this in curly brackets, and then after that I'll write the statement extra masons required, full stop. So let me run this code now and see. So now it is telling us 2 extra masons required. So let me now increase the days back to 30 and run it again. So now it says 2 masons required for project, and here it is telling us 2 extra masons required. And if you want uh, it to be reported more properly, let's print above all this the number of available masons and to write that this is actually the instruction for masons. So let me print masons, and why not, let's write here in the box bracket, let us wish to write the number of let me write number available equals to, or with a colon, that we wish to write here the number of available masons. So let me copy this from here and paste it within it, and because we are writing variables inside, we have to write f or formatted string behind it. So let me run it here again. So now it's writing masons number available is 3 and 2 masons required for project. But again, let me reduce the duration of the project, and it says masons available is 3 and 2 extra masons required. So this report is getting better and better. Now let me repeat all that for labors by simply copying all this and pasting it below it here. Now I'll just put some gap in order to differentiate between the two sets. Instead of days per mason, this will be now days per labor, and this will be labor capacity per day. So in order to make sure we are using the same spellings with capital and small case, let me paste it here like this. Number of labor required, let me copy this and let me paste it here. We need to compare it with the number of labor available, which is this, and we need to write it here as well. We need, instead of mason, the word labor being used, and here as well, also here, and the number of available masons should also be replaced with the number of labor available, and here also the number of mason required should be actually replaced with number of labor required and labor required. So let's run this code again and see the results. I did a mistake here. Days per mason should also be replaced with days per labor. All seems fine now. Let's run this code for again 10 days. So here I have a mistake of small extra indent here. You have to be careful. Let me remove this and now run the code once again. So now the report says the masons are available is 3, 2 extra masons required, and labor available is 6, and 2 labors required for project. It is not talking about extra, so this means 2 labor is actually enough. In order to make it more clear, instead of writing required, I'll use the word enough here as well. So let me write enough. and also here enough. So let me run the code again. So now it's more clearer. Masons available are 3 and 2 extra masons are required, while labor available is 6 and 2 laborers are enough for this project. It's more clearer report. So let's, instead of writing the report here, let's learn how to write this report into a file. So let me first of all save all this in a particular folder. So I'll say file, save as, and I usually use my Spring 2020 folder, and in it is lecture by files, and within this let me save it by the name of lecture 8 class, and then I save this. Now in order to write a report, first of all I have to open a file. So after writing this function, once it will be called, let's write with the proper indent a statement that will open a file for us for writing purpose. Let me write a file handler as report equal report equals to, now this variable report will have access to the file. So let me write a better name, report file equals to, and here I will write open function. Now in open, within the parentheses, first of all I will write the name of the file, and that can be, for example in this case it will be project report.txt. So what actually I want is that all these statements should be reported in a text file by this name, and with a comma I have to tell, is it for this file is open for uh, writing purpose or reading purpose. So I want to write in it, so in double quote I'll write W. If I want to read anything from it, I should write R in it. R means read. So once this file is open, I can simply transfer all this information of printing not on the console here like this, but I can actually directly write them into this open file. Now notice within the print, in the print function, if you write a comma at the end, it gets you to a help that tells that you can actually also write the file in which you want to write all this string. So in order to use it, you have to write file with colon, and then you have to tell which file in which you want to write this statement. So once you write comma here, you will come to know that beside this string that you want to print, there's so many other things that can be done to it, and one of them is writing this string not on the screen but to a file. So here you will write file, and with equal sign you will write the name of the variable that actually handles this file, which is report file. So let me write here report file. So this time this statement will not be printed on the console here, but it will be directly written in the file which is called project report.txt file, and because we haven't given any path to this file, it will be written in the same path as our lecture 8 class py file. So in C drive, user folder, Muhammad folder, OneDrive, documents, Spring 2020, lecture py files, and inside it a new file will be created by project report.txt, and in which this single statement will get written. So let me take you to that folder, and here we can see no such file by the name of project report.txt is available. So let me go back to the code and run it. So once we run it, notice the first statement, which was this statement, is not appearing on the screen here anymore, but actually it has been written into a file which never existed before, but hopefully now it exists. So let's go back to the folder and see, and yes, here it is. Let's open it by double clicking it. It will open up in Notepad, and we can see that report is written in Notepad here, which is what we wanted. So let me close this now and go back to the code, and here I will write in front of every print statement that I want to be in the report. I'll write file equals to report file, same here as well, and here as well, and here as well. Now all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 print statements will be printed on the project report text file, and nothing will be printed on the screen. So I just want on the screen that it must be written that report written. So I'll write here at the end of the function, I'll write print. Of course we have to be careful with the indentation. Print report written. Now notice, in case of else, only this statement will run. So I want, in any case, whether it is true or false, this should be written. So I should indent it back with this location. So now this statement will run only once this is true, and if this is false, so else will be running and this statement will run. And in any case, once this if else is complete, it will at the end will print this for us. So let me run this code now. So it is writing the labor statement for us on the screen here as well, because there is no file report equal to report file which actually tells that this is the file in which we want to write. This statement is not written here. So let me check in the report what happened. Let me double click it again. So we have the missing information, and then no statement of labor number is written here because of the same reason. Let me close it and let me write here file equal to report file, and then save it with Control S and run it again. So we can see it tells us here report written, and we can now go and check what's written in the report. And this statement actually ran because it was not in this block. Let me put this in the block by giving the same indentation as the above. So if I run it, it is not running because actually this statement is satisfied. So, and this only, these two statements only run once this is false. So if this is true, it will write this statement, else it will write these two things because the both of them are having the same indent. But if I bring it back to the same indent, which is the indent level of the function itself, then whenever this function is called, it will run this statement, this and this and this and this, check all things, blanks do nothing to it, and run these statements, check what is the situation, and also run this. So this will always be running for us. Let me run it again. This time it tells report is written, and let me go to the folder and check the report, and yes, it's a report as we wanted. So it says 2 laborers are enough for this project, but 2 extra masons are required, and number of available masons and laborers are 6 and 3 respectively. So we have learned how to write report directly in the form of a text file from Python. Let's now try to read all these variables from a text file as well. So in order to do so, let me open Notepad. Let me create a new blank text file, and let's write all these numbers in different lines, for example. So let me write 100, 300, 500, 3, 6 and 2, and let me save this as a normal text file in the same folder where I want to work. So here I'll write project input, and here in input I've placed it as capital and dot text, so it is a text file, and now I save it. Now it is saved in the same folder as of our project by the name of project input.txt. Now as we have written all the values of the variables that we need in this file called project input.txt, let's open it and read it line by line and store all these values within these variables. So first of all, I'll create the variable that will store the file from where we'll retrieve all this data by the name of data file, and then I'll say equal, and just like here I'll open it with the same name, but this time instead of writing purpose I'll open it for reading purpose. So I will say open, and then within quotation mark, because I've saved it in the same folder as of our project Python file, I don't need to write the full path here, otherwise I should write the full path of the file name with forward slashes. So the name of the file is project capital input.txt. So I'll write it here as project input.txt file, and now with the comma I'll write R for read purpose. Then for the first line, instead of 100 I'll hash it so that it becomes comment, and here I will say data file dot read line, so read read. So what this will do is this will read the first line of the file, which is 100, and will store it in Mason capacity per day. So if we want to store 300 in the second variable, we will write data file or read line once again, and what this will do, because already the first line has been read, calling this second time will read the second line, and similarly we'll keep calling it for all other lines like this. So instead of now loading the data directly into the variable, it will open the file. So this time all this data which is stored in this text file will be read, and this file will be referenced by this name data file, and then line by line every line will be read from here and stored into their corresponding variables. So let's run this code once again and see we get the same results or not. So here it is saying that these are not integers but are actually strings, and we cannot divide strings, so let's convert them into integers. Now as we know that Mason's capacity per day can be in decimal, so we can actually convert it into float. We can convert it into float by closing all this statement in float and parenthesis. So writing here again float parenthesis closed at the end, float, and then here as well. The number of masons and laborers and mixers cannot be decimal, they have to be integers. So let's convert them into integer, because there cannot be 2.5 masons, there has to be 3 or 2 only. So they are integers, they are not decimal or float. So let me convert all of them to integers. So now let's run the code once again. So here it runs smoothly and says report written, and let me go into the folder and see the report once again. So here report is fine. Let's see the change in the report once we bring it back to normal days. So let's bring it to 30 days here and run again. So again it says report written, and Let's check it out. So this time the previous report was 2 extra missions required because we wanted to complete the project in 10 days, but here 2 missions are enough for the project, and here labors required are only 1 because it is a 30 days project, while here 2 labors are required because it was a 10 days project. So we should also report the number of days here as well, so we can print number of days in the start of the project. We can print project title, and so many statements can now be printed by using the same format as we did earlier, like this. So a quick review, we imported the math library, then we opened the file where we had all the data, input data for us, then we inputted line by line every information that we required from that file. Then we defined a function by the name of list project resources, and then we calculated the masons quantity as well as the labors quantity, and then we called that function with the number of days and the number of square feet area of the wall to which we want to construct, and then eventually it reported the number of laborers and masons for us. Now let me add another statement for else here as well. So now here, instead of reporting only the extra masons required, let us also report another option to increase the number of days of the project as well. And we already know that how many days are required for one mason, and we also have the number of available masons as well. So if we divide the days per mason further with number of masons available, we will get the total number of days that are required to complete this project. So let's print it as the second option here. So here within this block of else, I'll say print, and then I'll just write OR, and the next line I want to propose again print, then with the function with the format string, I'll write a string within curly brackets the days per mason divided by the number of masons available. So either this or this many days. So here we'll write increase duration to this many days. So let me run this once again with 30 days. So I just run it, report is written. So let's check the report now. This is the report. Let me close all previous reports, and then with 10 days, let's see the second report. So here it is printing it on the screen for us, which we don't want with multiple decimal places. So let me round it as well. So round it to 1 decimal place, and further I want it to be written in a file. So I'll say comma file equals to, and we know the file is stored in a variable called the handle of the file is stored in the variable called report file. So here it is. Let me run this once again. So again, the word OR is not written in the file, but it is printed here. We want it to be written in the file as well, but let's check it first of all. So I open the report again. So we see that for 10 days 2 extra missions required. increase duration, but or is missing here, so let me write or there as well. Let me close this report. So comma file equals to report file, which is already open here. Now let's give some more information here. Before we start writing masons and labor information, why not let's print a title of the project. So we'll say print, and here we'll say project duration with a colon, and I want the duration to be written here. And because I'm writing a variable inside a string, so I have to write a format f in the start, and I want this to be written in the inside the file. So I'll say comma file equals to report file. Then I want with a space written mason with a little space there, and then all other statements about mason with double spaces. And then labor with a single space, and then all statements related to labor with double spaces. So this time let me run this code once again. Report has been written, and now let's check the report now and the previous report with 10 days as well. So you can see the difference now. Report is better formatted, project duration 10 days, masons 3 available, 2 extra masons required or increased duration to 14.2 days, labors available are 6, and 2 labors enough for this project. So this second report format is now very much improved compared to the previous, and this is how we can now automatically manage a project. So now what you can do simply by changing the number of days from here, and the amount of work in square feet here, you can manage this project by knowing how many of the resources are required to complete this project successfully, or otherwise we should change the number of days, increase the number of days as well. Now one last thing, which is called keyword argument. Now in functions, sometimes there are so many arguments, and some of them we don't want to use, and sometimes we need to use them in different order. For example, here in this case, first thing I need to put here is the duration of the project, as because it is the first thing here in the definition of the function. And the second thing I want to input here is the total wall area, because it is the second thing here in the definition of the function. But what we can do is we can write first of all the name of the argument, which is total wall area. So let me copy it from here and paste it here, equal to this. So now automatically the second thing is actually assigned first, and then with a comma I can write duration, which is the next argument here, and then I can write 30. So what we can do is, by writing the name of the argument, we can change the order of giving information to this function. So let me run this code once again and see the results. So it ran perfectly fine. Let's check the report, and report is also having the same information as earlier. Let me close this report, which was for 30 days, and let me change the duration to 10 days or just 5 days, for example. So let me run the code again. It ran smoothly. So let me open it again, the report, and now the duration is 5 days, and we need 6 extra masons and 14.2 days, while 3 labors are required for this project. So the writing the name of the argument inside the function while it is calling like this and equating it to the value which you want to assign to it, it's called arguments by keywords. So these are the keywords that we are using to call this argument. Another thing is the optional argument. For example, duration, if I write here 30 equal to 30 in the definition of the function itself, and I remove duration from here, then if the duration is assigned, it will be used in this calculation. But if it is not assigned, a default value of 30 will be assigned to it. So now I am not giving any value of duration, and I run it. Now it mentions that the default argument should be not the first one, but should be listed at the ends. So let's move this. I cut it from here and paste it at the end here. So we learned from here that all the important arguments whose values must be given should be written first, and all other arguments with default values should be written at the end. So let's run this code once again. So it ran smoothly with the report written, and let's check that has 30 days being used there or not. So last time it was 5 days, but now in the report it is 30 days. So I close the report and then I run it with the changed value of duration. So if I now say duration equals to 4 days, for example, and run it, the report is produced. Check the report. So it is now for 4 days, and we need 4 laborers now, and 8 extra masons required, or increase the duration to 14.2 days from 4 days. So in order to have the same ability of proposing days for labor, you have to write the similar thing in today's lab exercise for labor, and also you have to bring the capability of this function to calculate the management of mixers that we use in any construction project. And that is the simple basic activity I want you to do, and this concludes this tutorial.